Today we discuss Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Today we discuss about functions of the cerebellum. Now we can divide cerebellum into three functional parts: the lateral zone of cerebellar hemisphere, intermediate zone of cerebellar hemisphere, and the third functional part is flocculonodular lobe and valves. Flocculonodular lobe and valves. Now first about the functions of the lateral zone of the cerebellar hemisphere. Lateral zone of the cerebellar hemisphere. This part of cerebellum controls sequential motor activity. Sequential motor activity. Motor activity which involves sequential movements. Movements which come in sequence. So this sequential motor activity, that movements come in sequence and their timing, is controlled by the lateral zone of the cerebellum. So it controls the sequence and timing of the movements. What will be the sequence of movements? What will be the timing of each movement? Right? So planning and control of sequential motor activity is the function of the lateral zone of the cerebellar hemisphere. When we perform a motor activity, there is smooth progression of one movement to the other, to the next. So smooth progression of one movement to the other, that is the function of the lateral zone of the cerebellar hemisphere. I give the example. A person is taking bread with curry. The hand of the person moves toward the bread. A piece of bread is taken. The piece of bread is dipped into curry and then taken into the mouth. This is the sequential motor activity. Sequential motor activity. And person can perform this motor activity very smoothly. One movement will progress smoothly to next and so on. And timing of each movement is also controlled, right? So that as a single activity, so a single motor activity, the man is able to take bread with curry. Now in region of the lateral zone of cerebellum, there is failure of smooth progression of one movement to the next. There is failure of smooth progression of one movement to the next when there is region of the lateral zone of the cerebellar hemisphere. The other function of the lateral zone is extramotor predictive function. Extramotor predictive function. Cerebellum predicts before time how rapidly a person is approaching an object. Cerebellum predicts before time that how rapidly a person is approaching an object. Say, I want to go near the blackboard, near the whiteboard I want to go. I proceed towards the whiteboard, and then I can stop just before the whiteboard so that I will not strike the whiteboard. So I can predict before time how rapidly I am approaching the whiteboard, and just before the whiteboard I stop myself. This is the extra motor predictive function, and in this function help is also given by the visual system and the auditory system. So in this extra motor predictive system, help is given by the visual system and also the auditory system. So this was about the function of the lateral zone of the cerebellar hemisphere. Now keep in mind, lateral zone of cerebellar hemisphere is also called cerebrocerebellar. Cerebellum because of its connections with the cerebral cortex. So because of its connection with the cerebral cortex, the lateral zone of cerebellar hemisphere is also called cerebrocerebellum. It has got connection with the primary motor area, premotor area, somatosensory area. So in all areas of cerebral cortex, the primary motor, premotor, and somatosensory area, this part is called cerebrocerebellum. Next, about the functions of the intermediate zone of the cerebellar hemisphere. Intermediate zone of cerebellar hemisphere is also called spinocerebellum. It's also called spinocerebellum because of its connection with the spinal cord. So intermediate zone of cerebellar hemisphere is also called spinocerebellum because of its connection with the spinal cord. The intermediate zone compares the intended plan of movement with actually performed movement. So keep in mind, intermediate zone of cerebellar hemisphere compares the intended plan of movement with actually performed movement. Right? So compares intended plan of movement with actually performed movement. How can cerebellum get the intended plan of movement? Cerebellum can get intended plan of movement from the motor cortex, red nucleus, and also can get the intended plan from the ventral horn of spinal cord through the anterior spinocerebellar tract. It can also get intended plan of movement from the ventral horn of spinal cord along the anterior spinocerebellar tract. And this is called efferentoscopy of the intended plan. Efferentoscopy. Efferentoscopy of the intended plan it can get from the ventral horn spinal cord along the anterior spinocerebellar tract. Right? So cerebellum gets the intended plan. Compare it with the actually performed movement. Now information about the actually perform movement, cerebellum receives from the proprioceptors, along the spinocerebellar tract. So cerebellum gets the actually performed movement information from the proprioceptors, along the spinocerebellar tract. Intended plan of movement and actually performed movement are compared. So intended plan of movement and actually performed movements are compared. And if there is any discrepancy, then corrective signals are sent to the motor cortex, to the red nucleus, to correct the movement. So, intermediate zone of cerebellum, it controls the complex motor activity performed by the distal parts of limbs. You know, intermediate zone of cerebellum has topographical representation of the facial part and the limbs. So limbs and facial parts are represented in the intermediate zone, right? And this part is involved in the control of the fine-scaled movements of the distal parts of the limbs. It's concerned with the control of the fine-scaled movements of the distal parts of the limbs. The other function is that intermediate zone of cerebellum has damping function. It prevents tremors, it prevents pendular movements. So it prevents tremors and pendular movements. Cerebellum controls the rate, range, force and direction of movement. It controls the rate, range and direction of movement. Other function is that intermediate zone of cerebellum, it controls the ballistic movements. Ballistic movements are very rapid movements, say the movement of the fingers in typing. That is the ballistic movement. These are controlled by the intermediate zone of the cerebellum. Similarly, movements of eyes during reading. So eyes move rapidly from one line to the next line and so on during reading, right? So ballistic movements of eyes during reading. And then movement of eyes when a person in a moving vehicle see the outward object, outward scene. So a person in a moving vehicle looks the outward scene, right? Eyes move rapidly to fixate the outward scene. This is also the ballistic movement, very rapid movement of the eyes when a person sitting in a moving vehicle looks upon the external scene, right? So this was about the function of the intermediate zone of the cerebellum. The next functional part of the cerebellum is the flocculonodular lobe and vermis. Flocculonodular lobe and vermis. This part is also called vestibulocerebellum. Vestibulocerebellum, because of its connection with the vestibular nuclei. Because of connection with the vestibular nuclei, this part is also called vestibulocerebellum. This part controls the equilibrium and the posture. So involved in the control of the equilibrium and the posture. When this part is damaged, there will be disturbance of equilibrium. Disturbance of equilibrium occurs and this part is damaged. It also controls the stretch reflex and muscle tone. Also controls the stretch reflex and the muscle tone. Cerebellum has got excitatory effect on the stretch reflex and muscle tone. In cerebellar disease, there is hypotonia. In cerebellar disease, there is hypotonia. This part of cerebellum, that is vestibulocerebellum, is also associated with motion sickness. It is also associated with the motion sickness. So this was about the functions of the vestibulocerebellum. Right? Now we come to the cerebellar disease. Cerebellar disease. Cerebellar disease occurs when there is lesion involving the cerebellar cortex and one or more deep cerebellar nuclei. So when lesion involves the cerebellar cortex and one or more cerebellar nuclei, then there will be cerebellar disease. Cerebellar disease. In cerebellar disease, keep in mind, there is no sensory loss and no paralysis. So no sensory loss and no paralysis in cerebellar disease. The basic disturbance is ataxia and asynalgia. Ataxia and asynalgia. Ataxia is incoordinate movements. Incoordinate movements is called ataxia. Asynalgia, normally there is synergism between agonists and antagonists muscles. So normally there is synergism between agonists and antagonist muscle. This is lost in cerebellar disease. The other feature of this disease is dysmetria. So dysmetria inability to control the range of movement. Inability to control the range of movement. Say, I want to touch this projector. Now my finger will exactly go to the projector to touch it. But in this patient of cerebellar disease, he is not able to control the range of disease. The hand may overshoot or undershoot. The hand may overshoot or undershoot. This is called dysmetria. Dysmetria is inability to control the range of movement. The one feature is past pointing. Past pointing is when the hand overshoots the intended mark. So when the hand overshoots the intended mark, it is called past pointing. So dysmetria, inability to control the range of movement, and past pointing is when the hand overshoots the intended mark, intended point. Our next feature of cerebellar disease is A-leukodikanesia, A-leukokinesia or dysglucokinesia. Dysglucokinesia or A-leukokinesia. So this feature is inability to perform rapid, opposite, alternate movement, or inability to perform rapid, alternate, opposite movements, such as rapid supination and pronation. Rapid supination and pronation. So this patient will not be able to perform the rapid supination and pronation. So inability to perform rapid, alternate, opposite movements such as rapid supination and pronation, right? It won't be performed by this patient. And this is called A-leukokinesia or dysglucokinesia. Dysglucokinesia. So it is A-dialeukokinesia and dysdialeukokinesia. So A-dialeukokinesia or dysdialeukokinesia. So A-dialeukokinesia or dysdialeukokinesia. Next feature is gait of the patient. Staggering gait. Staggering gait. Having a wide base. Patient walks on a wide base, has staggering gait like a drunken person. So staggering gait like a drunken person, and patient walks on a wide base. What is the posture? Head is rotated and flexed towards the side of lesion. Head is rotated and flexed toward the side of the lesion. And patient tends to fall toward the side of the lesion. Say on the right side is the lesion. So patient tends to fall toward the side of the lesion. Toward the side of the lesion. Next feature is there is slurred speech. Slurred speech due to dysarthria. So slurred speech due to dysarthria. Dysarthria. So dysarthria is incoordinate contraction of muscles of phonation and articulation. So incoordinate contraction of muscles of phonation and articulation is dysarthria. So there is slurred speech or dysarthria in these patients due to incoordinate contraction of the muscles of phonation and articulation. The other feature is intention tremors or action tremors. Intention tremors or action tremors. Tremors are not present at rest. Tremors are not present at rest. Tremors appear during voluntary actions. Tremors appear during voluntary action. Say a patient wants to touch this object, there is no tremor at rest. But When hand will be touching this object, there will be tremors, right? There will be tremors during voluntary action called the intention tremors or the action tremors. The other feature is rebound phenomenon. Rebound phenomenon. A patient is not able to stop a movement abruptly. Patient is not able to stop a movement abruptly. The examiner or doctor holds the hand of the person. Say the patient, I am holding his hand. He is asked to pull the hand towards himself. He is asked to pull the hand towards himself. The doctor abruptly will release the hand. The doctor abruptly will release the hand of the patient. The hand will strike the chest or the face of the patient. His hand will strike his chest or his face. This is called rebound phenomenon. That is, the patient is not able to stop a movement abruptly. The doctor is holding the hand of the patient. This is the patient, I am holding his hand. He is asked to pull the hand, he is asked to pull his hand towards himself. And doctor suddenly will release the hand while the patient is pulling towards himself. The hand will strike his chest or face, and this is called rebound phenomenon. Rebound phenomenon. The next feature is decomposition of movements. Decomposition of movements. Patient is not able to perform actions involving movements at more than one joint. It is not able to perform the actions involving movements at more than one joint. The movement is broken into components. The movement is broken into components. I gave the example of eating bread with curry. A normal person, as action, hand moves towards the bread, piece of bread is taken, dipped into curry, and then taken into mouth. So this action is smoothly progressed and involves movement at different joints. Involves movement at more than one joint or different joints. But in a patient of cerebellar disease, first he will move the hand towards the bread. They try to take a piece of bread, there will be tremors. He won't be able to properly take the piece of the bread. Then piece is moved towards the piece of bread is moved towards the curry, dipped into curry. It tremors, and then we try to move towards the mouth. May not be able to put the piece of the food into the mouth, right? So this action, this motor activity is broken into pieces. It's broken into components, right? So this will occur in a patient of the cerebellar disease. Our next feature in this disease, in this patient, is nystagmus. Nystagmus. Nystagmus is regular, rhythmic. Regular, rhythmic, oscillatory movement of the eyes when a patient tries to fixate eyes on one side. So regular, rhythmic, oscillatory movements of eyes when the patient tries to fixate his eyes on one side. So regular, rhythmic, oscillatory movements of the eyes when the patient tries to fixate eyes on one side. Nystagmus is the prominent feature when the region involves the flocculo-nodular lobe. So important feature when the region involves the flocculo-nodular lobe. The next feature is hypotonia. So decreased muscle tone, hypotonia, other feature. Now when you elicit tendon jerks in these patients, there will be pendular knee jerk. So pendular knee jerk in these patients, you strike the patellar tendon with a hammer and the leg moves like a pendulum. The leg moves like a pendulum. The pendular knee jerk is the feature of the cerebellar disease. So in cerebellar disease, I told you, no sensory loss, no paralysis. There is ataxia, incoordinate movements, asynergia, dysmetria, and pulse pointing. Adiaducokinesia, adiaducokinesia, or dysdiaducokinesia. Slurred speech due to dysarthria, staggering gait like a drunken person, action or intention tremors, rebound phenomena, decomposition of movements into components, nystagmus, hypotonia, and then pendular knee jerk. These are the features of the cerebellar disease. So there are certain cerebellar function tests. Certain cerebellar function tests. One is finger nose test. You are subject to touch the fingertip to the nose. So finger nose test. Finger test. Walking on a straight line. He is not able to walk on a straight line. He will walk with a wide base. He is not able to walk along a straight line. Then adiaducokinesia or dysdiaducokinesia. Dysdiaducokinesia or adiaducokinesia. You ask the subject to perform rapid supination and pronation, he won't be able to perform. And then you can also test the Lomborg sign, right? So these are the cerebellar function tests. So this was about the functions of cerebellum, and then about the features of the cerebellar disease.